The call came on a Tuesday morning. A quiet, unremarkable Tuesday, the kind of day where nothing is supposed to change. But on the other end of that line was a man who had carried a secret for 30 years. A secret that had destroyed one family, haunted an entire town, and buried the truth beneath 3 decades of silence. He was confessing to murder. Now we go back. Back to the beginning. Back to a small town in rural Ohio, where everybody knew everybody, where the diner on Main Street still had the same owner it did in 1991, and where the name Lisa Moreno was spoken with a grief that never fully healed. Lisa Moreno was 23 years old in the summer of 1993. She worked the early shift at a local grocery store, took night classes at the community college twice a week, and was saving up to move closer to her younger sister in Columbus. People who knew her described the same things, always. Her laugh. The way she remembered your birthday without being reminded. The way she made every room feel a little warmer just by walking into it. On the evening of August 14, 1993, Lisa left her night class and never came home. Her car was found the next morning, parked at the edge of Briar Creek Road, a long, dark stretch of 2-lane highway that cut through the woods just outside of town. The driver's side door was open. Her bag was still on the passenger seat. Her keys were still in the ignition. Lisa's body was discovered 2 days later by a local hunter, in the woods approximately 400 yards from her car. She had been strangled. The Wyandotte County Sheriff's Office opened a homicide investigation immediately. The town of roughly 6,000 people went very, very quiet. Detectives canvassed the area. They interviewed neighbors, classmates, co-workers, anyone who had seen Lisa in the days before her death. They collected evidence from the scene. They had a partial boot print. They had fiber evidence. But in 1993, without DNA technology capable of delivering a clear match from degraded samples, the physical evidence could only take them so far. Suspicion fell on several men in the early months of the investigation. One in particular, a 31-year-old local man named Gary Trask, was questioned twice. Trask had been seen at the same gas station as Lisa on the evening she disappeared. A witness reported seeing a truck matching Trask's vehicle description parked near Briar Creek Road that night. But Trask maintained his innocence. He had a partial alibi. His story held just enough that charges were never filed. The investigation stalled. Then it went cold. The Moreno family never stopped asking questions. Lisa's mother, Carol Moreno, attended every sheriff's office briefing for the first 5 years. She wrote letters. She made phone calls. She kept a photograph of Lisa on the front door of her home, a quiet, permanent statement to the town and to anyone who might know something. Carol passed away in 2011, having never seen justice for her daughter. That fact alone sits like a stone in the chest of everyone who followed this case. Years passed. Trask stayed in the area. He got married. He worked construction. He coached Little League for a season or two. To the outside world, he was unremarkable. But people in town remembered. Whispers never fully disappeared. And according to those closest to him, Trask was never fully at peace. By the early 2000s, the case had been transferred to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation's Cold Case Unit. Advances in forensic technology meant that old evidence could be re-examined in ways that simply had not been possible a decade earlier. Investigators quietly requested that the original evidence be submitted for updated DNA analysis. The degraded fiber samples were reprocessed. Results were inconclusive, but not entirely without value. They narrowed the field. They pointed, again, toward Gary Trask. But pointing is not proving. And for another decade, that remained the painful reality. In 2019, investigators received a new lead. A woman who had been in a relationship with Trask during the late 1990s contacted the Cold Case Unit. She stated that Trask had made a comment to her, just once, late at night, after drinking, that she had spent 20 years trying to interpret. He had said, and these are her words to investigators, that girl on Briar Creek never should have been there. But she was. And I was too angry to think straight. The woman had not reported it at the time. She said she had told herself it meant nothing. But she had never believed that. Not really. That statement, combined with the re-examined forensic evidence, gave investigators enough to build a renewed case strategy. Working with the Wyandotte County Prosecutor's Office, the Cold Case Unit began preparing for a potential grand jury presentation. They also made a calculated decision to approach Trask directly, one more time. On a Tuesday morning in March of 2022, two investigators knocked on Gary Trask's door. He was 60 years old. He looked, by all accounts, tired. Not surprised. Just tired. The conversation lasted 4 hours. Trask initially repeated the same denials he had offered in 1993. But somewhere in the third hour, something shifted. The investigators had laid out the evidence methodically. They had told him about the woman who came forward. They had told him what the updated forensic analysis suggested. And then they waited. Gary Trask looked at the table for a long moment. And then he told them what happened. He had followed Lisa's car that night. He had known her, not well, but enough. He had developed an obsession he could not explain or justify. When her car pulled over on Briar Creek Road, she had stopped because she thought she heard something wrong with her engine. Trask stopped behind her. What followed was a confrontation that escalated in minutes into violence. He described the details to investigators in a flat, affectless tone that those present said was among the most disturbing things they had ever witnessed in an interview room. He had driven home afterward. He had gone to sleep. And he had never, in 30 years, called anyone. Never turned himself in. Never told the truth, until that Tuesday morning, when the weight of it finally became something he could no longer carry alone. Gary Trask was arrested and charged with aggravated murder under Ohio Revised Code Section 2903.01. He entered a guilty plea in November of 2022. At sentencing, Lisa's sister, Maria Moreno Walsh, stood before the court and delivered a victim impact statement that left the courtroom silent. She spoke about her mother dying without answers. She spoke about 30 years of a photograph on a front door. She looked directly at Trask and said, "You didn't just take my sister. You took 30 years from every single one of us." Gary Trask was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will die inside an Ohio correctional facility. The town of Wyandotte exhaled, not in celebration, but in something closer to grief finally given permission to exist. Justice, when it comes 30 years late, does not feel like victory. It feels like confirmation of a wound that never closed. Lisa Moreno's photograph still hangs on the door of her childhood home, where Maria returns every August 14th. Some things you do not take down. Some things you carry forward, because someone has to. If this case stayed with you, if you believe these stories deserve to be told, subscribe. A new case drops every single week. The truth does not have an expiration date. And neither does our obligation to find it.